What is up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome into another episode of Know Your Role. I'm Xavier Catania, and my role is to host this podcast. I'm coming to you live from the KC Sports Company. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube. You're checking us out on all the podcast platforms, rating and reviewing. Follow us on social media at KC Sports Company. I'm at Know Your Role X, and check out the website kcsportscompany.com. We just added a bunch of new merch. All of our logos have been updated. They're a lot more clean, and there's some really cool stuff in the shop right now. Make sure you use Know Your Role as the promo code. All one word, no spaces, and that'll give you 15% off your purchase. Go check out my new premium hoodie, my hat, and my shirt. The hoodies are actually a lot better material than you would think for the price, and it's a really good deal. So make sure you take advantage of that. And we're also doing a giveaway on Twitter. So go check the company Twitter, and you can get entered into that to win some free company stuff. There's a hat and a shirt in the giveaway, and you can't really beat free stuff. So make sure you go check that out. Now, a lot of people are talking about the Chris Jones contract still. I think I've made it pretty clear the way I feel about that. I tweeted the other day that Brett Veach said it's going to get done. I believe him most of the time. When he says he's going to sign someone, he brings them back. So I believe that this deal will get done. The last time Chris Jones was up for a contract, it got done right at the beginning of camp. And I anticipate this will be similar, although I also tweeted out today that he will most likely get signed about 10 minutes after I turn off this recording. So if this comes out Monday and Chris Jones is signed, well, you'll have to wait till next week to hear what I have to say about it. But that's where I'm at. I think he's going to get signed. I'm not too worried about it. I think he's one of the best players on the team and one of the most important pieces of this team. So I think Brett Veach understands that, and I am confident that it's going to get done. So that's all I'm going to say about that for now. And I really want to talk about Travis Kelce a little more in depth today because he's been in the news a ton this off season. He did SNL, which was awesome. The monologue was great. He's a better actor than I would have ever thought. So that was cool. Um, He's done two ceremonial first pitches, one in Cleveland that was completely botched. He spiked into the ground like a football. And then he had his redemption in Kansas City, despite slipping on the mound, threw a strike, redeemed himself in front of the home crowd. And I think that just goes to show that he needs to be in Kansas City because he does his best work with KC. Um, he was on a White House visit, of course, with the rest of the team. He's got his New Heights podcast with his brother, and that's been going viral pretty much every time that they get on the mic because they say something very interesting or funny, or in the case of last week, Travis clapped back at Jamar Chase for the whole drama that's been going on there with him and Mahomes showing the rings and saying, "This is who," and all of that. It's just been a lot of fun. The Bengals rivalry is something that we've been talking about a lot on this show, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been keeping Kelsey in the news there. And this week, they had tight end U, which George Kittle is credited with him and his family kind of keeping it going, but Travis Kelce seems to be a big part of it. There were videos of him coaching up people on how to run routes at tight end U, and there were some other clips that came out of those days of tight end U going on, where one of them was George Kittle did an interview from tight end U with Pardon My Take from Barstool, and I I don't watch them too much because I really don't love the hot takey type stuff. I really enjoy in-depth analysis, and I don't necessarily gain much value from shows like that. But one of them was going viral this week because some guy named Billy Hot Takes, who I've never heard of until this week, was pretty much up to the shenanigans that you would expect from his name. And he asked George Kittle whether he thought that Travis Kelce runs soft with the ball in his hands, which is just an absurd statement to make, to be honest with you. Like, it makes no sense why anyone would even think that. And we're going to get into why here in a second. But I will say Kittle stood up for Travis. So this is not going to be a Kittle hate segment. I actually really like George Kittle. I think he's a really fun player to watch, and he's a really good two-way tight end where he's such a good blocker and a good receiver. And I think that's why Kelce gets a little bit of shade sometimes. But it's just crazy to me to say that Kelce was soft because he led the league in yards after catch by everyone except for Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler. He was ahead of Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, Chris Godwin, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Adams, Deebo Samuel, you name it. He was ahead of everyone. Tyreek, everyone is behind Travis Kelce. It's not as easy of a stat to nail down as you would think. I've checked 3 different sites and it's all has different listings for the yards after catch. So I would imagine that comes from the different people charting and what they view as the start of the run and the end of, and all of that stuff. But um basically no matter what site it's on, Kelce is ahead of everyone. It it's um really just absurd to say that he runs soft. And another example of that is that he leads all tight ends in yards after contact. He had 197 last year. And the next closest was TJ Hawkinson with 144. George Kittle had 137. Pat Fryermuth 126. So Kelce was pretty far ahead of most everyone else there. He was also ahead of everyone else in broken tackles. All of those guys were in the single digits for broken tackles, and Travis Kelce was at 13. Um, to say that he runs soft is a little bit wild to me. Now, he's also number 2 in juke rate at a 14.3% rate. So the fact is that Kelce is making people miss. He is one of the best assets in all of the league in run after catch. Like, the only 2 players ahead of him are running backs, as we discussed. And what's funny about running backs is that, like Austin Eckler, for instance, he had 848 yards after catch. He had 722 receiving yards. So that just tells you, like, a lot of those plays are screens and stuff that are set up for run after the catch, to where Kelsey's doing a lot of his work catching the ball downfield and then gaining extra yards, making people miss with his patented spin move. That little where he hesitates one way and goes the other way and just dusts everyone. And everyone knows it's coming and they still can't stop it. It's insane to watch. It's such a good move. Um, it really is a beautiful thing to watch when he gets that thing going. Um, but I think we've established that he does not run soft. Now, I think one of the best parts of Kelsey's game is that he knows when he's got. He knows when he just can't go anymore, and he's not going to take extra hits. He's going to go out of bounds, or he'll get down when he sees 2 or 3 people around him. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that the fact that he gets so much more volume than everyone else, like we're talking about George Kittle here. George Kittle had 60 catches. Travis had over 110 catches. So the fact is that he's such a bigger part of the offense and he needs to be healthy. That it doesn't do the Chiefs any good for him to just lower his shoulder and try to run through everyone he sees. And you can see it in the yards after contact per reception. It's not a huge difference between these guys. George Kittle was at 2.3 and Kelsey's at 1.8. And there's only like 2 or 3 tight ends that were over 3.5. per reception, but those are on very small sample sizes. Both of those guys, Chigozia Okonkwo from the Titans and Johnny Smith, who was with the Patriots last year, um, they didn't play as many games, and they had 32 or less receptions. So it's very small sample size. And anyone with the bigger sample size was coming down closer to 2. So 1.8 is not bad at all. But what you notice is that a lot of these tight ends that have the higher yards after contact per reception, a lot of those guys are playing like 12 to 14 games. There's not a lot of them that are playing full seasons. And I think it's because of the way that they play. I mean, we saw that with Rob Gronkowski, and he was really hard to take down, and he'd lower his shoulder into anyone just to pick up an extra 3 inches. But he also was hurt a lot and missed a lot of games because of that. Now, Travis Kelce has missed 2 games in his whole career. So I'd say the health means a lot more to the Chiefs than that extra half a yard per reception that he could possibly be getting, especially because it that half a yard is not doing a lot to take away from Kelsey's production. Now you see a lot of criticism of Kelsey being a bad blocker as well. And for one, I just don't think that's true. It makes me roll my eyes so hard when I hear that, because we've seen the clips of him blowing up DBs in front while he's lead blocking for a rusher, and we've seen him be able to handle his own in the blocking department. It, is he George Kittle? No. But that he's also not used that way, and he's not on a run first team like George Kittle is. George Kittle has to block because of the system he plays in. He is not as valuable in that system as Travis Kelce is to his system. And that's just the bottom line. And you can see it in the target numbers. Kelce basically doubled Kittle's targets last year, and he doubled his receptions as well. And you just don't I just don't see a need for Kelce to be blocking, and if you watch Kelce play and all you can think about is his blocking, then I don't think that we really have anything more to talk about, because that's just we're not gonna see eye to eye in the way that we analyze football. And he's so much fun to watch work and do what he does that I don't see how you could want more out of him. He is third in the league in receptions at any position last season. The only 2 people ahead of him were Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill. He was ahead of Stephon Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devontae Adams. Go down the list, he's ahead of them, all of them. And he also was 8th in receiving yards for any position. I think, Tyreek, Jefferson, those kind of guys were ahead of him, but he's still top 10, even for receivers in receiving yards. He had just an insane stat line: 110 catches, 1,338 yards. Um, he was 20 yards behind CeeDee Lamb. I mean, he's right there with the best of the best in the league. And he was also second in touchdowns, only behind Devontae Adams, who had 14. Kelce had 12. So he's right there in providing that touchdown value, that yardage value, that play in and play out consistency, catching a high percentage of his targets. He also was 8th in the league in 20-plus yard receptions. So he's a big play machine. He's just tearing up the seams in the intermediate part of the field. He's absolutely one of the best intermediate level receivers in the entire game. He is so good out of the slot, and he really just cannot be covered. And one thing you've noticed is with the Chiefs seeing so much zone coverage, Kelsey will just go to where the open spot is. We've heard from them that he doesn't even actually run routes when he sees zone coverage. He just goes to the open spot. And if you watch the film, he's wide open constantly. It doesn't even make any sense how open he is. And that's just those instincts. That's the savvy veteran mentality, and that's also being on the same page as your quarterback and seeing the same things as your quarterback. That's the time in the off season, the time in the film room, and the time together on the field to make that all come together. And Kelsey is absolutely one of the most valuable weapons in all of the league, just based on what he does on a per catch rate for first downs. He caught 78 of his 110 receptions last season were first downs. That's a 70% of all of his catches go for first downs and keep the chains moving. And that's number 2 among all players. And that is an invaluable trait to have, with someone that's got a nose for that first down marker and someone that is catching every third down target, that is always can be relied on to keep the team moving down the field. And I mean, that's part of why he is not kept in to block. It's a net negative for the team if you're keeping Travis Kelce in to block. If he's catching a first down on 7 out of every 10 catches, well, then you should be getting him at least 10 targets a game, because that's 7 free first downs. You don't even have to think about it. That's, I mean, that's the difference in winning and losing a lot of games. And it just, I don't understand the criticism for blocking. I think what a lot of it is New England fans that want Gronk to hold on to the greatest tight end of all time conversation, but they know it's over, so this is the only criticism that they have. And um, when Tyreek Hill was traded last year, it was a clear indication that Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes are the most important part of this offense. Everyone else is pretty much interchangeable. I love Creed Humphrey. He is someone who could be replaced. Literally everyone on this offense, I think, can be replaced except for Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. And really think the Chiefs just don't want Kelce putting in himself in bad situations by trucking everyone he sees or blocking all the time. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, but Rob Gronkowski broke his forearm blocking for an extra point. Like, is that even a risk you should be taking? To me, I don't think it is. When you have 3 other tight ends on the roster who can go do that, why would you take one of the we've established one of the best playmakers in all of the NFL and put him on the field in situations where he has almost no value, where other guys can do that same job, and you keep him for the thing that he's good at? I mean, these conversations are just so nauseating to me, but I love taking the time to discuss Travis Kelce because, as you can see by my background, he's one of my favorite players, maybe my favorite player of all time. Um, and it's him and Pat for sure. I mean, the greatest duo that we've maybe ever seen. And so I love talking Kelce. I mean, the damn show's named after one of his quotes. So I think as Chiefs fans, we got to really stop engaging the Gronk and Kittle fanatics who just try to diminish Kelce because of him being a dominating receiver. Literally, who cares if he's a top tier blocker? His blocking prowess is irrelevant to his rightful place as the GOAT of tight ends. And my closing argument, as Chiefs fans, we watched Tony Gonzalez and Jason Dunn play on the same team. There's no argument that I've heard anyone ever make that Tony Gonzalez is a better blocker than Jason Dunn. but nobody's advocating to put Jason Dunn in the Hall of Fame. The blocking is a plus, and yes, I think a lot of tight ends need to know how to do it. But Kelce is not any tight end. He is a receiver in a tight end's body, and he's an absolute nightmare matchup for most defenses. And you're letting the defense off the hook if he's not running a route. So with that, we're going to get into a break. And then when I come back, we're going to talk about some Chiefs history and some things that ultimately led to the Chiefs where they are now. And I think it's going to be very interesting. So stay tuned for that.
What up, KC? On the heels of yet another Kansas City Super Bowl victory, we have an awesome opportunity for you to broadcast your business to the local Kansas City market. We've created something called Kansas City Sports Company, which is a sports media hub for multiple live shows, all of which cover all the local Kansas City teams. Now, we have 30-second ad spots, 60-second ad spots, we have event sponsorships, studio sponsorships, show sponsorships, and much, much more. This is a great opportunity for you to start early with us and broadcast your business to a very dedicated, very enthusiastic Kansas City audience. Contact me or hit the Contact Us link on our website to learn more about this opportunity.
And we are back on Know Your Role. Now, I got something a little different we're going to talk about this time because I found this to be insanely interesting. I found this during the week this week, and I was not going to talk about this on the show, but I got so fascinated by this video when I watched it that I had to break it down. And so I was scrolling through some random Reddit threads. I came across one that was asking for the name of a YouTube video that took a deep dive into one of the worst drives in NFL history and how it changed the league forever. And in the comments, somebody directed everyone to a Dorktown video on the Secret Base YouTube channel, and it was called The God Awful Drive That Changed NFL History. And I started diving into more Dorktown videos. They got a lot of really cool ones. They've got one about a Steve Bono 76-yard run, who some of you older cats might remember, um, where he basically was running untouched because the the Cardinals sent their entire defense to stop the run, and no one watched him. And that is a really interesting video. There's one about the 2010 Chargers and the fact that they're the only team to have a number one offense and a number one defense and not make the playoffs. And if you remember, that was the year the Chiefs won the division with Todd Haley, and that was the year before the events that I'm about to describe. So I just found this video to be insanely thought provoking and just really interesting to see how easily things could have went so much differently for the Chiefs franchise and ultimately the NFL as a whole. And so in 2011, let's set the scene, right? The Jets were coming off of two straight AFC title games. Their franchise was one that was on the rise. They were led by Rex Ryan and Mark Sanchez, and everyone was thinking that Mark Sanchez was going to take that leap into his third year, and the Jets were going to be a team to be reckoned with for years to come. Um, they were 7-5 when the game in question happened. They were well on their way to get back into the AFC playoffs and make some noise. So the Chiefs came to town with Todd Haley as their head coach, which we all remember him. He was credited with turning around one of the worst 3-year stretches in NFL history because the Chiefs from, I believe it was '07 to '09, was like some of the worst football of all time. And that was a really, really tough time to be watching football. 2010, the Chiefs won the division, as we just talked about. The Chiefs had a number one, or the Chargers had the number one offense, number one defense. Their special teams just absolutely crushed them. If you guys all remember the Dexter McCluster punt return, week one, Monday night doubleheader, is raining in Arrowhead. McCluster takes that kick back. That was a common story for the Chargers that year. Um, and so, long story short, the Chiefs won the division. Dwayne Bowe had a huge year. Matt Castle went to the Pro Bowl. And so, Todd Haley looked to be having the team headed in the right direction, but 2011 was not going as well. Um, they had, I believe they had 4 wins heading into this Jets game. They were clearly like bottom of the league. Todd Haley was on the hot seat. Things were not going well in Kansas City. And I think Todd Haley probably could have made it to the end of the year, but what unfolded in New York would ultimately lead to him prematurely losing his job, mostly because of what happened on a single defensive drive with about 8 minutes left in the third quarter. And I'm going to give you the quick rundown. I really encourage you to go check out that Dorktown video because it goes way more in depth than I'm going to be able to, because frankly, they're a lot smarter than me and they have a lot more time to go back through the archives and really flesh out what all happened there. And it's absolutely fascinating. But the drive that we're going to talk about was a drive that started on the Jets' own 10-yard line. And it was, like I said, about 8 minutes left in the third quarter. To start the drive, the Jets commit 2 penalties that brings them back to their own 3-yard line. And then this is when the Chiefs proceeded to completely implode. Um, on the drive that effectively started from the 3-yard line, the Jets ended up driving 97 yards for a Mark Sanchez rushing touchdown. And the Jets only gained 9 net yards from their offense. 16 from scrimmage technically, but with those penalties, it was 9 net yards. So the Chiefs really just committed an insane number of penalties that moved the Jets all the way down the field. One of those penalties was like a 30-yard pass interference by Kendrick Lewis. One of those was an unsportsmanlike conduct called on the head coach, Todd Haley himself. And all in all, the Chiefs surrendered 81 yards to penalties on that drive, um, which is like insane. Dorktown went back in the archives and they found that this drive was uniquely bad. Nothing like it had ever happened since 2001. They went through all the drives that started at the 10-yard line, and they just went through the scoring drives and what all happened on the scoring drives. And like most of them, there were no penalties. Some of them had like a decent amount of help from penalties, but nothing was even close to the 81 yards the Chiefs gave up. I think the next closest was like somewhere around 50, but just an absolutely astronomical number of penalties happened in this game. I mean, the Chiefs were well over 100 total penalty yards. And what was funny is that the Chiefs on one drive had more penalty yards than a lot of teams had, like, in like a good portion of their season. Like, it was nuts. And so had that not all happened, Todd Haley probably makes it to the end of the season as the coach, but because that drive was so historically bad and such a just horrible show of discipline and lack of discipline, I should say, um, Todd Haley got fired, which is something that Clark Hunt does not want to do during the season, but I just think he could not handle seeing any more of this. So, as most Chiefs fans remember, Romeo Crennel took over after that game and took the Chiefs back to Arrowhead to beat the 13-0 Packers with Aaron Rodgers coming into town. And I was at that game. I'll never forget like being in the stands and everyone's doing the discount double checks and stuff, like making fun of Rodgers. And it was so crazy because we had watched the Jets game the week before and we're like, we're going to get beat so bad. Like, we didn't even think it was going to be close. So we're in the parking lot, we're tailgating, we're just, like at least we're at the stadium, that kind of thing. Like that's the energy we've got. Like we're about to see a beat down, but at least we're at the stadium. This is going to be fun. The Packers coming into town undefeated. Like this might be an ugly one, that type of deal. Um but what ended up happening was the Chiefs winning, and that 7-day stretch from the Jets game to Haley's firing to Crennel taking over and beating the Packers, that pretty much solidified Crennel as the Chiefs head coach. And believe it or not, the Chiefs still had a chance at the playoffs after that because they ended up winning or losing to the Raiders the next week, and that ended their playoff hopes. But they did beat the Broncos last week of the year, and that was the Tim Tebow Broncos. And they were actually like they were they were right there for a playoff spot. Um, so in my mind, Todd Haley definitely finishes the season if that awful 81-yard penalty drive doesn't happen. Um, and Dorktown posits this exact same thing. They say they likely let Haley finish the year, and then they would have brought in someone other than Crennel if Crennel wouldn't have beat the Packers as the head coach. So had they done that, they probably give that new head coach more than just one season of grace, just to give him a chance to rebuild the team. But because it was Crennel, and because of the history of Crennel coach, and because of how undisciplined the Chiefs remained under Crennel, he only lasted that 1 year. And because of that, the Chiefs had the ability to go hard after Andy Reid when they brought when that season ended. And now there's a really, really awesome story about how Clark Hunt went to the airport and intercepted Andy Reid on his way down to Houston for an interview. And I think Andy was also supposed to go to Arizona pretty quickly after he went to Houston. And basically, Clark Hunt trapped Andy Reid in a conference room at the airport for like 6 hours and wouldn't let him leave without signing a deal. And that seems kind of weird, not gonna lie, but it also I'm very thankful for that. I'm very thankful for Andy Reid. I'm thankful that Clark Hunt is an owner that really takes winning seriously and really was doing all he could to win, even when his franchise was in the toilet. He could have just been happy with a loyal fan base and continued to just band-aid the problem, but no, he didn't. He wanted to completely rebuild the whole team, and that led to Andy Reid coming and bringing all these coaches and bringing all these front office guys in. They bring in Alex Smith, who ultimately led to Patrick Mahomes, and he helped mold Patrick Mahomes into what he is now. And so if Andy never comes to KC, Brett Veach probably wouldn't be there, and neither would a lot of that coaching staff. Patrick Mahomes probably doesn't come in. Alex Smith probably never comes in. And who knows if the Chiefs ever actually turn around their franchise. And you know what happens if Andy actually gets to Houston? I mean, I really love running through these thought exercises of being like, how would history have changed if one of the greatest coaches of all time goes to one of the worst organizations of all time? Would he have seen through the bad ownership in his interview and turned it down and went to Arizona and maybe taken that job? Or would he have taken the Houston job and been handicapped by the McNair family and all the horrible decisions that they've made over the years? Would we have seen Andy Reid coach Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins? What all happens with that situation if Andy is there? Just so many situations that could have been different. Like, what if he turns down Houston and goes to Arizona and takes the Arizona job, and then Arizona never brings in Bruce Arians? What is that? What implications would that have had for the Buccaneers getting Bruce Arians in the future? There's many butterfly effect possibilities. They're just endless, and like they're a lot of fun to talk about, but luckily for us, the reality is that we have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and Brett Veach and Clark Hunt, and we're watching these men assemble a dynasty in real time. And the culture truly starts from the top down, in my opinion. And I think we're very fortunate to have a tight knit and cohesive group at the helm of the team that we love. And I can't wait to see what the future brings for all of these guys. I I think Andy is just getting started. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is just getting started. He's only going into his sixth year as a starter, and Brett Veach is a young guy. He's also just getting started and making his name in the league. And Clark Hunt has a lot more years to help build this organization into something that we are all going to look back at this time. And this is going to be, I mean, some of the most fond sports memories that we'll have is this time of year. So it is fun to run through the thought experiments. And it also is fun to think about, like, how fragile this stuff really is. Like, if not for, Todd Haley getting a personal foul in the midst of one of the worst drives of all time, do the Chiefs actually have this mini dynasty, this birth of a new dynasty that's happening in the NFL? Does that happen? I mean, chances are that it doesn't, because Clark Hunt likes to give his guys a chance. And I think that year of suffering, that 2-14 year of the worst football that I've ever watched in my life, that was the trial to get us to the promised land. Like, if you made it through those years from '07 basically to 2013, like if you made it through those years, then this is like this is just what we were waiting for the whole time. All the division titles, the wins, the Super Bowls, the playoff wins, the home playoff games, the MVPs, the all the accolades for Kelce that we talked about earlier, all of the Hall of Famers and future Hall of Famers that are a part of this epic run that's been happening. Um, Man, it's been such a fun ride. And I'm glad that the dominoes finally fell in the Chiefs' favor, because we had a lot of years of that not happening, and it's good to be on top. That's all I got for you today. Check us out on YouTube. Like I said earlier, Casey Sports Company. Hit us up on Spotify, all the other uh, podcast platforms if you're just into audio. Hit us up on the social medias at KC Sports Company. I'm at Know Your Role X, as you see on the banner. Website is kcsportscompany.com. Make sure you remember to hit that promo code Know Your Role for 15% off, and it'll also help your boy. Please go check everything out. Enter yourself in the giveaway and tell everyone you know. Subscribe to us everywhere, like, comment, all of our stuff, and spread the word. The only way this thing grows is if we got people out there telling others about it. So anyone you know who loves Chiefs, tell them check out KC Sports Company. If they love Royals, tell them check us out. Jayhawks, we got you. Anyways, I'm Xavier Catania saying, know your role and shut your mouth.